Hey there, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Dan, it's good to see you here. Appreciate you joining us. Marty, always good to see you. Kyle, appreciate you joining us as well. There might be a few more people come in. I know it's kind of a holiday week, and so not sure we're going to have a huge crowd today, but we do want to go through this content, get it up on YouTube so everybody can watch it there, and we'll go from there on that. So we'll give everybody a few more minutes here, and then we'll get started. So Marty, is it hot in Chicago? Yes, I hear you. I don't know. Yeah, I just realized everybody's mic and camera are disabled, so sorry about that. A slight setting change here real quick. Dan, thanks for letting me know about that. There we go.
That way you're not staring at the screen by yourself, right?
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Hey there, Angie. Good to see you. Sierra, good to see you. Always good. All right. So DJ's here too. Hey, DJ, good to have you. You turn on your mic and camera. If you join the meeting and your mic and camera are not on, let me know and I'll flip them on for you. I forgot to check that little box when I set up the meeting, so my apologies. All right, we'll get started here. Welcome to Forward Focus. It's our like a virtual user group meeting, and we have this every month. So just to give you, for our newcomers in the group, an introduction to FocusPlanit. FocusPlanit is a company that I started in 2013, and we want to base everything that we do around helping MSPs with the strategy of running their business, using ConnectWise as a tool, not just a piece of software. So we kind of want to take a holistic approach of how we're using ConnectWise and making sure that we follow the design and it's something that is going to be useful for you as a business. I am running alone today. Usually Afton is with me, and she's still off on maternity leave, so her and the baby are doing fine. So I'm hoping that she'll be back next month. In the meantime, if I hesitate, it's because I'm trying to read the screen and flip on everybody's cameras and mics and all that good stuff too. So I apologize in advance for that. Here at FocusPlanit, we do the consulting. We also do ConnectWise PSA admin. So we handle those administrative details for you. One of the other things that we do have business process workshops. And this is where we come to your place of business and get on the whiteboard and work with your team to understand how ConnectWise is designed to operate as a business flow through it. We also offer some back office services. If you're interested in these, give me a shout. We help you through, everything from, converting sales sales opportunities to sales orders and purchasing, and we help with some inventory management, invoicing, and making sure everything goes to accounting properly. So just an introduction about us. Next up, we'll start talking a little bit about upcoming events. And so I really don't have any structured events for this month. However, if anybody's in the Houston area and wants to meet up with me, I plan to be in that area down July 24th or 26th through that week. So if you want to meet up, if you're in the Houston area, reach out to me and I'll gladly get connected with you and we can meet up. So today's topic. We've been working through the ACDC business framework, where A is acquire, C is convert, that's sales, D is deliver, and that's what we're going to start with today. We've been through attracting leads. We've been through the sales process, and now we're going to talk about service delivery. And service delivery, of course, is everything from just simple delivering a computer from a sort of single ticket or a complete onboarding project. And the way we're going to run this today is talking about something that's more of an onboarding project, but you can scale that up or down either way. So we're going to talk about what's happening after the deal's signed and tying into that service delivery aspect of things. So, as everybody knows, when a deal moves from sales to service delivery, a lot of MSPs, they lose time, margin, maybe some client goodwill, because the handoff is never smooth, right? And a part of that is just the way we are as humans. We're in a hurry. There's a lot of things to do. Sales wants to just give you the information they have and run back out and sell more stuff. And so what we'll talk through today is just kind of how we can help with that transition and help on a continuous improvement model of the transition. And Dan Martin, I'm glad you're here today because you can speak to instances where you've seen this service delivery fail. And Dan Martin has been in the service business for I don't know how many years, longer than you'd like to admit, probably. But I appreciate you being here today to help talk us through this.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
Sure thing. All right. So, when we are talking about, again, ACDC, A is acquire, that's marketing. C is sales, convert, right? So when we have a marketing message and we have our brand, then when the prospect goes from reading the marketing to entering our system as a lead to that sales conversation, that process should be consistent. So whatever sales talks about then would be what we deliver. Again, we're looking for consistency. We'll talk a lot about consistency today. The key to remember here is that when sales does hand off to service delivery, that delivery team can only be as prepared as the information handed to them, right? So there have been a lot of times where I've seen where delivery teams doing onboarding and they come across something and it's, it throws a wrench in things because they had no idea that was going to happen. So, and I'm sure we've all seen that before. Marty, I'm going to call you out, man. I mean, your sales to service delivery process has got to be one of the best because you're doing sales and you're doing service delivery. So counting on you for that smooth transition, right? So when we talk about this handoff with, as it relates to the project execution, that handoff, it sets the scope and the pace for everything moving forward. And if you think about the client having a great experience with marketing, they're like, oh, wow, this looks cool. Let's talk to this company. And then they have a great experience with sales. And then we get into service delivery and they start questioning their decision to move forward with us. So what we want to do is continually improve that service performance, continually improve the handoff to help with that transition down the line. So when the transition doesn't work, it shows up in several business impact areas. So with onboarding consistency, if you think about onboarding as a process, then every onboarding, every client that gets onboarded should have the same strong start and not a version that depends on who ran that deal, right? So if you have one salesperson doing a deal and that client onboarding looks different than another, then you have a consistency problem. So what we're looking for here is that consistency and also the delivery efficiency. So if you have a smooth process, that clean handoff means less rework, less gotchas, and fewer meetings and calls and messages to try to clarify things. From a management perspective, a leadership perspective, if you have a process and if you have things visible, we've talked about making work visible before. When we were talking about sales, we talked about the sales process being visible. So when we're talking about operations here, we're talking about operational visibility so that management can see, the status of how things are going, maybe workload, and things like that, instead of bothering people and digging through notes and inboxes and stuff like that. And then we're also talking about alignment between, I'm sorry, it's not between, it's across, alignment across teams. So when you have a simple process or a structured process, you have sales, delivery, finance, all working from the same picture. So I don't know, Dan, if you have any input on that or thoughts about that. Oh, you're muted.
Try it again.
There you go. Thank you.
You missed all my pithy comments.
Oh.
Sorry about that. No, I just 100% in agreement. You've got to have that.
Great. Sorry, I'm turning on a couple more mics and cameras. Marcy, good to see you. Patrick, good to see you. Appreciate you being here today. So we were talking about business contact or business impact areas. Now, if we think about it from a sales perspective, that delivery quality has to be kind of decided before the technician even touches the work, right? So it starts, we're talking about a handoff here, and it starts with how clearly that agreement is understood, how clearly the technical structure is understood, and making sure that everything's communicated according to your company process across all the teams. So let's take a look at how that translation happens. There's a noticed translation layer between sales and service delivery execution. And so the thing to remember is that sales conversations are, they kind of become a documented agreement because the client remembers sales saying one thing, sales remembers saying one thing. Promises, if you have a structured process, the promises can get captured or written down and not just left in somebody's memory. And obviously, this is where AI can become like a very important factor. I kind of like the Plod AI. This is it's a great tool for having those conversations and capturing everything. We can record the conversations, and then those conversations can be part of the handoff process. So based on some of these transcripts and the summaries and some of the AI work that you can do with the transcripts, then each business unit can review that sales conversation from their own lens, right? So they can, if we think about it, again, ACDC, where A is acquire, that's marketing. Marketing can review that sales conversation and just kind of get an idea of whether their marketing is consistent with the sales message. Is the marketing consistent? And then sales themselves can go back, listen to that transcript again, review the summaries, and just kind of keep an eye out for any lessons learned or any kind of improvements that could be made in the sales conversation.
Yeah,
Then
I think you made a great point there as well in the like using Plod. You know, there's so much stuff that is coming out, as we all know, from an AI standpoint. I just ordered a new one called it's called Fieldly, but it's the same idea as Plod, but it's specifically around capturing you know, things that you've agreed to, or you know, action points and things like that. And it's one of those that is I think it's a recharge once a week. So
yeah,
that, you know, so if you're on their unlimited plan, you literally, you know, of course we all like to have Big Brother listening to us anyway, but it will, you know, you can completely record every single one of those conversations and that back and forth, because that is a key, right? So many times it's like you said, the salesperson says, "Oh, I told them that we don't support all of their home computers," and the
yeah,
customer says, "Oh, no, I asked about it. Said that was the most important thing, that we do support all the home computers." Now
yeah,
you're gonna, he said, she said.
exactly. Yeah, and if we talk about everybody listening to that conversation, and again, marketing, sales, service, most importantly, service, they're going to identify those key points in conversations. And the other idea about service listening to sales is that you're listening from a technical viewpoint. So you may hear something that wasn't said, right? So you may hear an implication of something or something that you're just going to go back and clarify, right? Also purchasing, if purchasing is involved as far as what products to order, making sure that the equipment and everything is consistent with the sales. And then most importantly, again, I've said this a million times over the years, is that anything you put into ConnectWise is going to end up in finance, right? And so finance needs to listen to the sales conversation, get their key insights out of the transcript, and make sure everybody's on the same page as it relates to invoicing. Because if we think about consistency through marketing, sales, service delivery, it has to follow through to invoicing as well. Because you don't want marketing, sales, service delivery, and then all of a sudden you got some wild invoicing structure going out that doesn't even agree with anything that was sold. So the key here is consistency throughout that entire process. So, and with each step, that's a point where the clarity can be gained or lost. And so when we look at the different handoff points, it varies. And so we have to get consistency in there. What we see across the MSPs, different teams rely on different sources of truth, right? And they have different places to store their information. So notes, emails, attachments, SharePoint, Teams, all over the place. And so what ends up happening is that delivery teams, sometimes they start work with different levels of clarity about where the information is. So what we want to do is structure the deal inside of PSA. When we talk about ACDC, PSA does not handle the A very well. So marketing, there are some marketing components inside of ConnectWise PSA, but there are companies like GlassHive and HubSpot that do a more consistent job in terms of marketing, and they integrate with PSA. So, it's one of those issues like where a third-party tool does a better job than the core tool does. And so PSA handles sales very well, handles service delivery very well, and it handles finance very well. And so when we're structuring the deal inside of PSA, we have to remember that we're moving it from an opportunity all the way through to finance. So we're going opportunity to sales order to project or agreement or whatever, right? So we're moving it from sales into that operations component of the business. This is where that key information comes into play. We want to make sure that we capture the scope overview, of course, as well as any kind of client objectives, and most importantly, the roles and responsibilities moving forward. So we always look for next steps and for who has the responsibility for the next steps. Any questions so far? I need to slow down or speed up or anything? All right.
I'll make one
so-
comment. You know, I think this is also why we have to be careful in kind of managing sales as far as what they sell, and being able to have consistent agreements where every single one isn't a unicorn, because it's going to make it very difficult for your sales or for your support people to know what they're supposed to be supporting when every single customer is different.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. So we're going to try to create this structure and consistency inside of PSA. So, with the thought that, PSA is your source of truth. I say that fully realizing that there are some things that are done better in Teams and SharePoint, and but if PSA can point to those resources, or if you have that structure built into your MSP processing, then or processes, then you know that, yep, it's in PSA. This is where the structure of the deal is. I need to go get further information here in Teams or SharePoint or whatever. But what has to be standardized is that there have to be some non-negotiable inputs or some non-negotiable negotiable locations for the information. So, we're looking at foundation here, foundation first. So just keep in mind that when we're talking about this consistency thing, we're talking about consistency that comes from a shared standard that the business operates on, and not from individual habits. So this is where, if we put it in PSA, we know where the home of everything is, so nobody has to really hunt for it. They just have to know where to start looking, right? And the whole goal here, again, is just align net sales with delivery expectations, so that, we want both sides to know what done looks like. With PSA, there's a lot of different ways to standardize onboarding. You can standardize it with everything starting from sales order statuses and notifications sent out. We can run workflows against those. But more importantly, when it comes to the details, we can get into project templates, different tasks within projects, and we can, do resource allocation and scheduling through, role-based assignments, or, resource or ownership of, which resource owns what task, things like that. The biggest thing we see with onboarding is having a consistent onboarding project template in your projects. And that template may change from time to time, but you want the consistency to be there as much as possible. Not just the mechanics of the project templates, but you want to kind of define how technicians and project teams interact with the PSA, and identify, where to go, what to look for in terms of next steps on the project. You want the phases in that project template to be clearly defined, and all the documentation that they need is readily available, and they know that it's centralized and in one place. One of the things about the company record in ConnectWise, if you go to that client company record, you see all the tabs across the top. And so if your team knows that if there's anything they need to find out about that company, they can go to the company record and find out. If it's just in the project and they don't see what they're looking for, they bounce out to the company record. And it's, the information needs to be in one of those tabs. Either it's in notes, or it's in sales orders, or, whatever they're looking for. And again, you want to centralize as much as possible. So this is kind of repetitive, I think, but basically you want to make sure that there's when you do a new client onboarding, you want to double check and make sure that that scope and expectations and the conversations and everything that we're getting ready to put in actually match what was sold. So, if you think about sales brings a new client in, you have a handoff meeting or whatever your process is to hand off that new client to operations. And then your project manager or whoever on your team that's in charge of the onboarding, that owns the onboarding, they create the onboarding plan. Then take a step back before actually executing that plan and review it again, review that plan with sales or review it against that transcript and make sure that it's consistent. Sometimes we'll see where sales will do the handoff. Everybody's like, "Yep, I got it. I understand what you're talking about. We're gonna give them that." They create a plan and their, the project plan and get everything lined up, and they go ahead and get started. And then they realize that there's something that's not quite right. And so they go back and they're like, "Oh yeah, we talked about this in sales." And so if you do that step, if you just take a quick step before executing and double check again, then you're going to be consistent. So it's a good place to stop. You can stop right there and identify any kind of dependencies that may stall the project, or identify any kind of dependencies that you weren't aware of that that's going to make things not go smoothly. Also, if you step back, you're going to be able to get the team ready to go before they walk into that kickoff and execution part of things. So it's just kind of goes back to slowing down a little bit and get ready before you execute rather than just scramble and go. I do realize that what I'm saying is easier said than done. And in some cases, if you could just take a couple hours and do that, just slow down and kind of review things. With AI, you should be able to take that transcript from the sales conversation, summarize the key things, the key items, and then take your plan and compare it against that transcript and ask AI if you're missing anything. So you can really leverage AI. I use Copilot to leverage the plan against the transcript all the time, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So I don't know, Dan, if you have any comments on that, or anybody. It doesn't have to be Dan. It could be anybody. If your mic is not turned on and you want it turned on, hit me up.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. Again, AI definitely makes that a lot easier now to make sure that you're staying on point, keeping track of what you said, what you're doing. It's being able to keep our techs on track and make sure they actually know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the more that we can automate, the fewer opportunities that we have for someone to mess it up.
Yeah. And with AI, it's going to be a little bit easier to keep tabs. Yeah. So earlier I talked about getting everything into one place. So like consolidating all the data and trying to get most of everything into PSA, but realizing that PSA is good for storing documents, but it's not good as a document storage. It's you put them in there and then you kind of lose them. So a lot of our companies, our clients will just use Teams or SharePoint or something to store all the primary documents. but it's not enough just to put it in one place, because you have to have some structure, and the structure is something that you can build within your own company based on your company culture and how things work. But if you have storage without structure, it's just a neater pile of stuff. And I kind of refer to that as the attachments tab in PSA. I mean, you could throw everything into that attachments tab, but it's just a pile of attachments. I mean, it's really hard to sort. It's hard to filter. It's hard to, do any kind of document searches. But if you talk about the PSA tells me that I need to look in Teams in a certain channel for this document, or it's in SharePoint or whatever, then you can, if the documents are in there, then you can ask Copilot, hey, I need the document on how to do whatever, right? And so it'll bring it up and go from there. So we're looking for a structure overall. We're looking for a structured delivery approach, keeping the roadmap, so to speak, of the service delivery in PSA, keeping tabs on how much time we spent and things like that. But then also developing a structure for how you're storing your documents and how the team is to access the documents. Any
Yeah.
questions about that? It's a little bit.
Yeah, I think one thing, there are a couple tricks as well that you can do, whether you're using SharePoint or IT Glue or some of these other things. Oftentimes, especially if it's like a SharePoint or separately structured, is you can also leverage configurations. So sometimes I'll create a configuration type that we want to have for every single customer for some of the different documentation, and then you can just have that link in there. That will also be, can be very helpful inside of ConnectWise when you're looking at configurations and tickets by configuration. That will also, so you can have that link back to that particular document.
Yeah.
So that way it's specific for that customer if you're not using like an IT Glue.
Right. Yeah. Good point. So when you're talking about the structure, you're basically talking about defining a standard for how you want to capture that deal information. So the biggest thing about defining the standard as it relates to ConnectWise is to understand what all the fields and the tabs are. And if you think about that, then you can establish the required fields, the required inputs before moving a deal forward. And that keeps everything consistent and reliable, accessible, right? So, you're going to keep in the PSA, you're going to keep, it's going to be the primary source. Again, it's the source of truth. So everything from the opportunity details to documented activities to the sales order conversion and project structure, project templates, and things like that. So, and if it's the standard, you're going to have repeatable workflows at that point. You're going to repeatable way to add new clients, a repeatable way to add new services, repeatable way, obviously, to onboard new clients and things like that. And one thing I might mention, I talk about structure and building out your PSA and things like that. Although there's the term best practices, we like to talk about your company practices. And even further, we like to talk about your company practices today. Because your company practices today may not have been your company practices 5 years ago, or even, with the way things are moving 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So, the term best practices can be interpreted a lot of different ways by every MSP is different, a little bit different. And as much as we see organizations and groups, try to standardize things, every company is different because every one of us humans are different. Some of us are more different than others, right, Dan?
Oh yeah.
Uh, so, so when we talk about, you know, putting in like repeatable workflows and things in PSA, yeah, there's a lot of common workflows. There's a lot of common templates. There's a lot of common, configurations. And at the same time, we have to realize that everything's unique to how you want to run your business. So kind of take that into consideration as we talk through this. And, I'm happy to talk with anybody about what might work best for your business. Just hit me up and we can get on a call and talk about that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll make a comment there too. It is very common to see this situation where even somebody who had something set up really well, uh, they set it up and then they also kind of have them pride in how they set up ConnectWise, especially if it's in the ConnectWise world, because sometimes that's a real pain in the neck. And so, like you said, 3 years ago it was awesome, but now when you find yourself fighting, sometimes it's not the problem with the product necessarily, but it may very well be the way that you have it configured. And Bill's great at this. Some of the things that were configured, especially been around for a long time, some of those were workarounds because that was ConnectWise didn't support a particular way to do something, so you had to figure out how to squeeze ConnectWise into your process. So
yeah,
definitely worth having that conversation with Bill about this is our business process that's failing. What's the best way to do that in ConnectWise?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point because there, there are a lot of times when ConnectWise couldn't do something, and we developed workarounds. Amy's on the call today too. She's like, yeah, we developed all kinds of workarounds, and then 2 years later, ConnectWise can now do this, and um, so just kind of talking about the structured delivery approach back to that. I mean, the whole delivery depends on how well that agreement in the sales conversation was translated. So again, we want to introduce a pre-delivery step, review step into the execution. We also, it's probably a good idea just to have a quick pre-agreement step to make sure that the agreement is in alignment and the invoice is going to be correct based on what was sold. So we want to talk about this across the entire the scope of the business to make sure that everything is in alignment with that sales conversation. And then the other thing, with the delivery of the project, of the onboarding project, is to make sure that we maintain visibility of how that project is going, and that we maintain any kind of communications with the client, to make sure you're gonna want to white glove that project implementation, that onboarding. You're gonna white glove that through to make sure that everything's going the way it was expected to go, so that when the onboarding's done and you get into maintenance mode, it becomes a much smoother transition. So, the whole thing about onboarding, and you already know this, it's that onboarding is going to really set the tone for the long-term relationships. Again, they had a good experience with our marketing, they had a good experience with our sales, and now we're onboarding them, and we want to make sure that they have a good experience there. Make sure we understand their expectations. We're in constant communications with them to ensure that we understand their expectations and that there is consistency in everything. So, and one thing here, as we approach the end of this, at the end of any onboarding, at the end of any kind of project, really, time permits, like a PC installation, maybe not, I don't know, but it's good to get together as a team, um, marketing, sales, service, and finance, and do kind of a post-mortem on how that onboarding went, and dig into the details of, did that onboarding did that onboarding really show that the marketing was right? Did that onboarding show that the sales conversation or the delivery was based on the sales conversation was correct? Everything went well. When we did the onboarding and they got their first invoice, does that invoice reflect what we talked about in sales? So it's kind of a post-mortem there, going over, look for, obviously lessons learned, ways to improve the efficiency of things. When you're onboarding a client, you're gonna go through it and you might pick up on something that you can do a lot differently that would be more efficient. So those kinds of things, and then whatever comes out of that post-mortem meeting could be worked into your company structure and your company policies. There's also a certain degree of reporting, and when you're looking at onboarding, you're looking at making sure that the project moves smoothly, efficiently, consistently, on budget, things like that. And Dan, I think you could speak more to the reporting aspect of this than me, but
Yeah, I think there is definitely the part of that setting the expectations, right? Oftentimes sales has a tendency to, hey, your old provider was horrible. We're going to be awesome. We're going to fix everything. You're not going to have any of these issues. And that's really setting a false expectation, right?
yeah,
So I think it is good. I always told people, this first month, you're probably going to hate me and you're going to wonder why you actually signed this contract. And if we didn't have a contract, you would be leaving, because it's going to be painful. Just like, and so if you set that up front, you explain why it's going to be, because we're going to be, ripping and replacing, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of, change in your environment, but that's setting you up for success. I think if you can get your salespeople to make sure that they're, not painting a rosy picture, because then they're going to, they will have a false expectation. And then, yes, I think the reporting is key. I'm a huge fan of not only just reporting for yourself, but being able to provide the reporting to your customers, right? So that customer transparency, here's how we're doing for you. This is this is what our metrics look like for you. And so is that meeting your, what your agreement was? And so if you have in your agreement that, we're going to have a service level objective of, our, response time, then show them what their, here's what our average response time has been for you over the last 30, 60, 90 days. And that can really eliminate, especially if your upper level, CEO type people, if they're able to look at a dashboard and see, hey, our response time is, under 15 minutes, then when somebody's walking into their office and says, oh, they sucked, they never respond to us, it takes them forever, is like, okay, well, that's not what I'm seeing. So you can instead of having that that conversation at the account manager level, sometimes you can push that into where your point of contact or your upper level management is able to remove those from the conversation.
Yeah. Does anybody have any comments or questions or anything about what we've talked about today, or we need some further clarification or anything like that? Anybody?
I'm sure Rob Leon has some stuff to say.
Rob Leon probably has lots to say. Good to see you, Rob. Did I turn your mic on? Yeah, I did. Good to see you too, Rob. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up a little bit early today. That gets us closer to the fireworks. I hope everybody has a happy and safe 4th of July. If you need anything, if you need help with ConnectWise and or have any questions or want a follow-up conversation about today's meeting, please reach out to me. Just send an email to Focus or to Bill at FocusPlanit.com, and that'll reach me. This will be recorded and put on our YouTube channel, YouTube at FocusPlanit.com, or I'm sorry, YouTube at FocusPlanit. And so go visit our channel. A lot of our previous meetings and webinars are there on the channel. And so hit subscribe or whatever it is you have to click on to make sure that you visit the channel. So I appreciate everybody that subscribes with us. All right, so unless anybody has anything else, I think that's a wrap. And it's good. I appreciate everybody being here today. Appreciate you spending your lunchtime with me. And Dan, thank you for your input. We appreciate that. Absolutely. And again, have a safe and happy 4th, and we'll catch you next time.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thanks, Phil.